this country called the USA, and we fly our flag cause we're proud and free, we're Americans. Red, white, and blue is our way of life. Never back down from a challenge or a fight. Nature provides, God gives the rights, we're Americans. We fish the waters and we hunt the lands. We forge the steel with our own two hands. With what we've got, we do the best we can, we're Americans.
It's time now for the Conservative Curmudgeon Radio Show. Now, here's Grouchy.
Good evening. Happy New Year. Glad you're back with me. At least I hope you're back with me. Otherwise, I'm talking to myself, which would be really stupid. Anyway, before we get rolling tonight, just want to remind you to stay tuned, because right after me, right here on KLRN Radio, we have Jesse's POV, followed by Constitution and Culture, and then we have America Off the Rails. Am I right?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, just wanted to make sure nothing changed over me while I was vacationing over the last 2 weeks. Anyway, as we kick off the new year, we get to start the fond farewell, fond in that it is a farewell, to Barack Obama. He is finally leaving us. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we get rolling into this tonight. Here we go. Let's just boot it from the beginning here. I'll start at the top of the notes. To the people who bought his lies and insincerity from the very beginning, candidate Barack Obama had an appeal that transcended ideology and indeed reached far past his party's base. He won over people across the spectrum by promising to fix some of the country's dysfunctions, like partisan gridlock and partisan warfare, special interest domination of policymaking, racial strife, and perpetual war. Now, at the end of his 8 years in office, judging Obama on his own terms against his goal of improving these troubled areas, it's painfully obvious that he is and has been an abject failure. In the face of war, Obama told the crowd gathered in Springfield for his presidential campaign launch in 2007, "You believe there can be peace. In the face of despair, you believe there can be hope. In the face of a politics that shut you out, that's told you to settle, that's divided us for too long, you believe we can be one people." This speech was a good benchmark against which to measure Obama's tenure. When he returned to Springfield last year, he admitted to one failure. "One of my few regrets," Obama said, "is my inability to reduce the polarization and meanness in our politics." Now, granted, he's not solely to blame here. He didn't do this alone. Harry Reid and Mitch McConnell and other congressional leaders, even before them, saw political advantage in obstruction and partisan warfare. And they seized it, and they practiced it. Party leaders scrapped old norms, inviting dysfunction on Capitol Hill in the forms of filibustered judges, nuclear options, the abortion of Senate rules, and debt ceiling showdowns, and the failure to appropriate money properly to government functions that are necessary. But Obama was complicit in and exacerbated most of these problems rather than doing anything to help. As a senator, he filibustered Samuel Alito's Supreme Court nomination and voted against John Roberts, even while admitting that Roberts was more than qualified. Senator Obama also voted against lifting the debt ceiling, in addition to voting present 168 times. As president, he broke as many norms as the partisans he scolded. He made a recess appointment of Donald Berwick to spare his party the embarrassment of defending the man. He made himself a super legislator, unilaterally rewriting laws he had signed, such as Obamacare, and passing into law bills that Congress had rejected, such as greenhouse gas curbs. Toss in Obama's trash-talking style and refusal to learn from political losses, which really meant a refusal to listen to voters who opposed his party and voted for Republicans. And you see how his presidency widened and deepened the partisan abyss. Obama failed to wrest power from the special interests, one of his central promises in 2008. Instead, he handed more powers to lobbyists and big businesses. The drug lobby he campaigned against actually wrote the Obamacare legislation together with the hospital industry, and this helped make the law as bad as it is. The revolving door spun as fast as ever, with more than 100 lobbyists landing gigs in the administration and untold dozens of Obama appointees cashing out to K Street or Wall Street. Obama's Treasury Secretary, Tim Geithner, administered the bailouts with an eye towards propping up the biggest Wall Street banks. Obama ran for re-election on the bailout of General Motors. In an iconic moment, his Medicare chief, Marilyn Tavenner, cashed out to run the healthcare insurance lobby and was replaced by Andy Slavitt, former executive at United Health. The insiders now have a stronger voice in government, and 5 of the 6 wealthiest counties in America are within commuting distance of the United States Capitol. Outsiders feel even more excluded from power, as the success of Bernie Sanders and President-elect Trump showed. Obama failed miserably to improve race relations. In fact, as with other areas he sought to change, he made them definitively worse. Many of his voters hoped that the first black president would defuse racial tensions. Symptoms of heightened racial tension are everywhere. Neighborhoods burning in Baltimore, police fearing to get out of their squad cars, black mothers on false evidence provided by activists whom Obama encouraged, more afraid of the police than the criminals that killed their children. Our 2016 election showed a country with unhealthier race relations. Donald Trump's ambivalence towards white supremacists didn't seem to hurt him in opinion polls. In his victory are signs that white people increasingly see themselves as an oppressed class of hyphenated Americans. Identity politics has taken over politics, and it really needs to stop. The blame here goes mostly to Obama's naivete, and as with his pledge to cure partisan rancor, his overestimation of his own abilities to fix the most stubborn problems. He has certainly not carried us from war to peace either. An Islamic caliphate has sprung up thanks to Obama's proclivity for fighting and running. Oh yeah, I said it. He's a coward. You don't believe me? Look at Libya. Terrorism isn't going away, and the U.S. is at war in as many countries as it was on his first day in power in 2009. Obama's promise to be a healer was central to his appeal, but he didn't replace war with peace on Capitol Hill, in our cities, in our rural counties, or around the globe. This litany of failure that belongs to him and him alone does not even touch the many areas that were not on Obama's agenda but should have been. This only describes some of the ways in which the 44th president failed on his own terms. And it's my estimation that it will take a plethora of historians to catalog the damage he has done to our country. Maybe you feel a little differently. I don't know how you could when you look at things objectively, but, whatever. That's my assessment of the Obama administration and his 8 years of craptastic performance. So as he gets ready to leave office, we got a few more nights. Well, we got the 10th. He does his farewell speech from Chicago. You can bet he won't be in the part of town where all the guns are. That just won't due for him. But maybe while he's there, he'll get to see part of his failure. But anyway, moving along to the next piece on here, and believe me, I have a lot on here tonight. I just hope we don't go through it too quick, but we'll manage. We're going to swing out west to the left coast, if you will. We want to discuss California, who continues to descend into one-party status. In the once golden state, there is one political game, and that is the Democrat game. Actually, one could almost call the Democratic Party the California Party at this point, given how the Democratic Party has been pushed to the margins of the United States. California has constituted the single largest landmass in the map that has come to be known the Clinton Archipelago after the election. It's important to make the point that coastal California is the Dem bastion. And it's not only because people are generally inclined to vote Democrat, it's also because the political machine there is completely skewed toward the Democrats. California has become as bad as New York City in many ways. Consider whether, if you owned a company in Los Angeles and were inclined in the non-Democrat direction, whether you'd make any non-Democrat statements. Not on your financial life. You might even write a check to the local party just to stay in the party's good graces. This is California today. The non-Democrats inclined often don't even vote anymore. It's no surprise that the state would hire Eric Holder to battle the Trump administration. Stay one surprise. One surprise. It will be interesting to watch Mr. Federal Power make the case for states' rights. This is going to be fun. I don't know how Holder actually is going to have time for this, considering his other endeavors with Barack Obama post office. They're planning to run this grassroots organization that they want to have a presence in every county in the country. And they want to win mayor's races and city council races and county commissioner races and start at the grassroots level and build a political structure. Folks, I talked about this a few weeks back. It's a scary, scary thought to think that these two radicals are going to go at this the smart way. They want a presence in the reddest county in this country. They're going to infiltrate states like Oklahoma. They're going to make their presence known, whether it's liked or not. And you can bet that they're going to teach people that are minded more like them how to feign towards the middle to get elected and get into office and then spring the liberal trap. Watch for it, folks. Watch for it. They have a lot of work to overcome, but watch for it. Now, getting back to California, of particular concern for these California Democrats, of course, is whether Trump will enforce immigration laws. Does he have the stones? The enforcement of such laws is a real threat to the California Democratic machine. In some parts of California, there are actually efforts to let non-citizens vote in elections. Indeed, this likely happens pretty often right now. Not that the state election apparatus in California would ever be inclined to expose it, though. It's a reasonable bet, however, that Trump's Justice Department will be examining the issue, and that scares the hell out of the California Democrats. Fighting Trump on the immigration issue is not solely a matter of justice for Democrats in California. It's about maintaining political power first and foremost. girding for 4 years of potential battles with President-elect Trump, Democratic leaders announced that Eric General, the former Attorney General, will represent them in any legal fights against the new Republican White House. The decision by the legislature to retain Mr. Holder, who is now a prominent Washington lawyer, is the latest sign of the ideological battle that may play out or may not play out over the next 4 years between this predominantly Democratic state and Washington. Hillary Clinton, the Democratic candidate for president, defeated Trump by more than 4 million votes in this state alone. Having the former Attorney General of the United States brings us a lot of firepower in order to prepare to safeguard the values of the people of California, said Kevin De Leon, the Democratic leader of the state Senate. This means we are very, very serious. He only used 2 verys, so he can't be very, very, very serious. Anyway, that's what's going on out west. California intends to fight for their morally bankrupt values and to screw over true American citizens. People of California, you have a choice. You really do. You don't have to vote for these people. You can replace them. You just have to stand up and do it. You have to realize that what they're feeding you is garbage first, and then get tired of it, and then stand up and do something about it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Obama's preparing for his farewell speech. His last vacation is behind him. He's entering the closing stretch of his presidency and an 11th hour push to tie up loose ends and put finishing touches on his legacy. Yes, his precious, precious legacy before handing the reins to President-elect Trump. Obama returned to Washington midday Monday from Hawaii with less than 3 weeks left. His final days will largely be consumed by a bid to protect his endangered health care law. That was a joke today. We'll touch on that in a minute. A major farewell speech, we talked about that already, and the ongoing handover of power to Trump's administration. In an email to supporters on Monday, Obama said his speech on January 10th follows a tradition set in 1796 when George Washington spoke to the American people for the last time in office. I guess you can say it was broadcast as, however they broadcasted things back in the time, Pony Express, whatever. But Washington did make a speech to the American people at the end of his time in office. Obama's speech will take place at McCormick Place, a convention center in Chicago. And Obama said, quote, "I'm thinking about this as a chance to say thank you for this amazing journey, to celebrate the ways you've changed this country for the better these past 8 years, and to offer some thoughts on where we all go from here." Key on that last part. Offer thoughts on where we all go from here. This is where he will lay down what Trump should and shouldn't do. This is where he's going to tell you to stand up and fight against what we voted for. We as a country, not we collective. Obama's chief speechwriter, Cody Keenan, traveled with Obama to Hawaii and spent much of the trip working on this speech. The Chicago trip will likely be Obama's last outside Washington as president and will include a family reunion of sorts for his former campaign staffers and administration members. Obama is also planning last-minute commutations and pardons, go figure, in line with his second-term effort to cut sentences for inmates given, quote-unquote, unduly harsh sentences. Though prominent offenders like Edward Snowden, Rod Blagojevich, and Bradley Manning are also asking for leniency, Obama's final acts of clemency are expected to remain focused on drug offenders whose plight Obama failed to address through criminal justice reform. Yet another marker of failure. After taking office 8 years ago, Obama and his aides were effusive in their praise for how his predecessor, George W. Bush, helped his team take over the massive federal bureaucracy. Obama has vowed to pass on the favor to Trump, but this transition is not going so smoothly. The two teams have clashed over the Trump team's request for information on Obama aides, fear that they could be used to eliminate government employees who worked on Obama priorities like climate change and minority rights overseas. Why is our administration working on people's rights overseas? Shouldn't they be worried about our rights here at home? Anyway, Trump's team, meanwhile, has been frustrated by Obama's attempts to box Trump in with parting moves to block ocean drilling, declare new monuments, and further empty out Guantanamo Bay's prison. While on his annual vacation in Oahu, Obama asserted himself forcefully on two foreign policy issues that put him in direct conflict with Trump. Obama directed the U.S. to defy tradition by allowing a UN Security Council resolution criticizing Israel on settlements to pass, then slapped Russia with sweeping penalties over U.S. allegations of hacking. The final days are Obama's last chance to define his presidency before he loses the bully pulpit and cedes his legacy to historians. For Obama, trying to convince Americans that his last two terms have reshaped American life for the better is even more critical amid concerns that Trump may undo much of what he has, quote-unquote, accomplished, including his abject failure of a health care law. As Trump and Republicans vow to gut the Affordable Care Act, Democrats are working to devise a strategy to protect the law by exploiting GOP divisions about how to replace it. To that end, Obama traveled today to the Capitol to meet with House and Senate Democrats, likely his last meeting with his party's lawmakers as president. He made an impassioned speech about his signature legislation, but offered very little to nothing, in the way of specifics on how to save it. His administration is also working feverishly to finish up regulations in the pipeline that Obama hopes can be completed in his final days, perhaps increasing the likelihood his policies carry over. But the closer it gets to Trump's inauguration, the harder those tasks become. Though Obama remains president until January 20th, the White House can't process the departure of all its staffers on a single day. So this week, its aides will start offloading, turning in their BlackBerries and shutting down their computers, and leaving a smaller staff on hand for the final days. Obama must also prepare to become a private citizen for the first time in 2 decades. An office of the former president must be stood up, and Obama's family will be making arrangements to move into a rental home in Northwest Washington, where they plan to stay until youngest daughter Sasha finishes high school. The Obamas have long lamented how the presidency denied them the freedom and privacy that they so richly deserved, with First Lady Michelle Obama likening the White House to a really nice prison. Maybe their new, smaller accommodations and abbreviated staff will help her feel more free. And hell, who knows, maybe even proud to be an American one day. But I wouldn't bet on it. Oh, folks, I don't know if I'll be able to take 2.5 more weeks of this crap going on up there. They're absolutely killing us. On the one hand, he's promising smooth transition. On the other hand, he's stymieing every request that Trump makes. Sounds like yet another of those famous Obama lies. All right. Well, we're heading in towards the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a pause here in just a minute, and when we do, we're going to head out to commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that UN Security Council resolution. Congress is actually going to address it officially. I don't know what really they can do, but, whatever. We'll talk a little bit more about Obama's farewell address. And we've got, what else do I have here? Yes, the biggest waste of government money, which is your and my money, that I think I may have ever seen. All that and a little more after the break. Stay tuned. We'll be back in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, but ain't that America? You and me. Ain't that America? Something to see. We believe in the American way.
The following message contains a special offer for listeners of this station. Are you a man over 40? Are you constantly looking for the nearest bathroom? Do you wake up multiple times a night to use the bathroom? Right now, Perfect Prostate is sending out free bottles of their groundbreaking new formula to listeners of this station. Perfect Prostate formula was developed by medical doctor Mitchell Fleischer, and its ingredients have been clinically studied to reduce your frequent nighttime bathroom visits and promote healthy urine flow. Right now, preferred customers get their first bottle of Perfect Prostate absolutely free. There's nothing to lose. Perfect Prostate is guaranteed to reduce that constant urge to use the bathroom, especially at night, and promote healthy urine flow. Don't wait. Call now for your free bottle. Just pay shipping and processing. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251. Supplies are limited. One free bottle per household. Call now. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps stand ready to defend the American way of life. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Hey folks, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Dr. Richard Harden. We are on the same mission, which is waking up America. We just have different paths. So stay tuned for some information on how you can keep up with Richard and all his work.
Visit Richard's website at raharden.com. That's the World Wide Web at RAHARDIN.com. At his website, you can see a summary of the 6 books he has written, where purchases may be made. He also has a link to 18 videos on YouTube and several blogs about Christian beliefs. If you prefer, visit Amazon.com/Kindle and type in Richard Harden to see and purchase his books.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Having a place to go after school will make you a better student. Having an outlet to express yourself will make you a better artist. Having something to do together will make you a better family. At the Y, we're helping build better friends, listeners, writers, swimmers, scientists, and musicians, one chance at a time. Give the gift of opportunity. Support the Y at ymca.net. The Y, for a better us.
But ain't that America for you and me? Ain't that America? Something to see, baby. Ain't that America? Home of the free, yeah.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Glad you're still here. Just a quick reminder, at the top of the hour, Jesse's POV is up next after me. And then you get Constitution and Culture with Susan and Dan. And then you get America Off the Rails with the rowdy one, Rick Robinson. And that, folks, is the KLRN Grand Slam of conservative talk radio every Wednesday night. Now, as I said before we went to break, we're going to talk a little bit about that UN Security Council resolution condemning Israel. And U.S. lawmakers are going to have their first opportunity to respond legislatively to that controversial UN resolution. And a vote has been lined up for tomorrow. Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy and House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Ed Royce announced Monday that the House will vote on a resolution opposing Security Council Resolution 2334. The UN measure passed just before Christmas after the Obama administration chose to abstain rather than use its veto to kill it, as it did in the case of a similar resolution in 2011. And yes, folks, in case you were wondering, this is how Obama is slapping Netanyahu in the face on his way out the door, knowing that there's nothing that anybody can do about it. This Thursday, the House will not abstain from its responsibility and will vote on a bipartisan resolution reaffirming our long-standing policy in the region and support of Israel, McCarthy and Royce said in a joint statement. This administration has lost all credibility when it comes to Israel. The administration's stunt at the UN hurt our ally Israel and made peace in the region even more difficult to achieve. In another initiative, Senator Jerry Moran of Kansas said he's going to introduce a resolution expressing the sense of the Senate that we stand in support of Israel and disapprove the UN's actions. Moran slammed what he called a series of blatantly misguided choices by the Obama administration with relation to Israel and Secretary of State John Kerry's controversial Middle East speech last week. The incoming administration will have to work overtime to repair the damage President Obama has done. Last week, Representative Dennis Ross of Florida introduced a resolution disapproving of the administration's failure to veto this one-sided and anti-Israel resolution in the Security Council. Ross's measure has 21 co-sponsors, all Republicans, although members of both parties have criticized the UN action and the administration's decision to abstain. Let's see, who was next up to make comments? It was Elliot Engel, Democrat of New York, said, I have always believed that Israel can't get a fair shake at the UN, and that is why Israel has relied on the United States to protect it from the anti-Israel tendencies of some UN Security Council members. And this is a ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, folks, Democrat from New York, Elliot Engel. This abstention represents a clear departure from convention and I consider this a break in the Obama administration's word that they would veto biased or one-sided anti-Israel resolutions. You go ahead on. Resolution 2334 is the first condemning Israeli settlements in disputed territories to have been adopted by the Security Council in more than 3 decades. It is also more far-reaching than the last one, which passed in 1979 after the Carter administration abstained, along with Britain and Norway, in that it declares that Israel's presence in those areas, including its most sacred cities in Jerusalem's Old City, constitutes a flagrant violation under international law. The U.S. brokered the 1993 Oslo Peace Accords, asserted that the final status of the territories disputed between Israelis and Palestinians would be determined by the parties themselves in negotiations. Critics of Resolution 2334 say that by declaring those areas to not be disputed but occupied Palestinian territory, effectively predetermines the outcome of those negotiations in clear violation of the Oslo Accord, and will make the necessary compromises much harder to achieve. Folks, let me tell you what this administration did with that, okay? Obama, Samantha Power, and John Kerry unloaded the equivalent of political excrement all over Israel. This was the biggest slap in the face, politically speaking. And it took Obama's cowardice to bring it out. He didn't have the guts to do this 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. He didn't have the guts to go anti-Israel until the very end of his presidency, when he can run and hide like the coward that he is. You talk about somebody deserving of no respect. Ugh. So anyway, while we're talking about the coward in chief, let's go back to his little farewell speech. As we talked about earlier, it'll be January 10th in Chicago. The final words of his written announcement had a quote that just absolutely, it'll take your breath away unless you're just dumber than a box of rocks and believe everything he says with bated breath. The quote reads, "Because for me, it's always been about you." That's the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard. And I'm trying real hard to keep this PG here. Real hard. Obama also noted in that presenting a farewell address, he would be following, the precedent set by George Washington. He's trying to compare himself with Washington is what it is. He wants to put himself on that level. In Washington's farewell address, we can go back to 1769 here. Washington warned the nation to avoid running up government debt and, antipathies against other particular nations. He said that religion and morality were indispensable to the political prosperity of our nation. Again, something Obama disagrees with vehemently. In announcing that Obama would give his farewell address from Chicago, he said he planned in his address to celebrate the ways you've changed this nation for the better over the last 8 years. And George Washington said in his, at a very important source of strength and security, cherish public credit of all things. Washington said one method of preserving public credit is to use it as sparingly as possible, avoiding occasions of expense by cultivating peace, but remembering that timely disbursements to prepare for danger frequently prevent much greater disbursements to repel it. Avoiding likewise the accumulation of debt, not only by shunning occasions of expense, but by vigorous exertion in time of peace to discharge the debts which unavoidable wars may have occasioned, not ungenerously throwing upon posterity the burden which we ourselves ought to bear. On the question of America's relations with foreign nations, Washington said, "Observe good faith and justice towards all nations. Cultivate peace and harmony with all. Religion and morality enjoin this conduct. And can it be that good policy does not equally enjoin it? It will be worthy of a free, enlightened, and at no distant period a great nation to give to mankind the magnanimous and too novel example of a people always guided by an exalted justice and benevolence. Who can doubt that in a course of time and things, the fruits of such a plan would richly repay any temporary advantages which might be lost by a steady adherence to it? Can it be that Providence has not connected the permanent felicity of a nation with its virtue? The experiment, at least, is recommended by every sentiment which ennobles human nature. Alas, is it rendered impossible by its vices?" George was a pretty smart guy. Not George Bush, that was George Washington. Just a reminder. In the execution of such a plan, nothing is more essential than that permanent no, I'm sorry, my notes duplicated somehow there. On the centrality of religion and morality to maintaining human freedom, Washington went on to say, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism, who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest props of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and to cherish them. A volume could not trace all their connections with private and public felicity. Let it simply be asked, where is the security for property, for reputation, for life? Is the sense of religious obligation desert the oaths which are the instruments of the investigation in courts of justice? And let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence or refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason, and experience, both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle. It is substantially true that virtue or morality is a necessary spring of popular government. The rule, indeed, extends with more or less force to every species of free government. Who that is a sincere friend to it can look with indifference upon attempts to shake the foundation of the fabric. Now, again, George Washington. Here's the announcement Barack Obama has published of his coming farewell. In 1796, as George Washington set the precedent for a peaceful democratic transfer of power, he also set a precedent by penning a farewell address to the American people. And over 220 years since many American presidents have followed this lead. On Tuesday, January 10th, I'll go home to Chicago to say my grateful farewell to you, even if you can't be there in person. I'm just beginning to write my remarks, but I'm thinking about them as a chance to say thank you for this amazing journey, to celebrate the ways you've changed this country for the better these past 8 years, and to offer thoughts on where we all go from here, just as we mentioned before. Since 2009, we've faced our fair share of challenges and come through them stronger. That's because we have never let go of a belief that has guided us ever since our founding, our conviction that together we can change this country for the better. So I hope you'll join me one last time, because for me, it has always been about you. Yeah, right. Okay. There's, I can't watch it. I'm sorry. I'm not going to watch it on the 10th. It's just not going to happen. I will gladly read it. I don't know if I could stomach his voice for that long. Anyway, just not going to do it. But anyway, that's what you got to look forward to on January the 10th. If you didn't have anything else to do on a Tuesday night, there he is. So now, as I promised you, we do have to touch on this huge bucket of waste. California Political Review has found what it calls the most wasteful study of all time for 2016. This is just this past year. Okay. A $412,000 grant from the National Science Foundation for an article, now get this, proposing a feminist glaciology framework. You heard me right. The article appeared in the journal Progress in Human Geography and notes that relationships among gender, science, and glaciers have been understudied. In reviewing what it considers 6 other top misuses of federal money, such as, quote unquote, men have appropriated cupcakes for women, and, quote unquote, safe sex videos are marginalizing to queer and disabled people, their words, not mine. California Political Review puts out a plea that hopefully President Trump will stop this abuse of the taxpayers by the academic class. When asked about the controversy over the federal grant given to him for the study on how to make glaciers feminists, the primary author, Professor Mark Carey of the University of Oregon, defended his research, telling Science Magazine, and this is a quote, "Professional research is published in journals for specialists in a given field. When removed from that context and described to non-specialists, the research can be misunderstood and potentially misrepresented. What is surprising about the brouhaha is the high level of misinterpretations, mischaracterization, and misinformation that circulate about research and researchers." This guy is so far out there, he's refusing to answer the question. This Professor Carey went on to say, if one goal of glacier research is to help the people living in places like the Alps and Alaska adapt to shrinking glaciers and the associated floods, landslides, and seasonal variation in water flows for irrigation and hydroelectricity generation, then it is important to study more than the physical properties of its ice. Social scientists like myself work to understand those complex societies, their politics and economies, their cultures, and yes, their gender relations, because patriarchy and sexism marginalize certain segments of the population, just as racism marginalizes indigenous, Latino, and other peoples. Professor, you don't need to know if a glacier has a penis or a vagina. And you certainly don't need $412,000 to study it to find out. And as for anybody marginalizing somebody else based on their race, that is a permission that only the person that feels marginalized can grant. As a half-white person, nobody, and I mean absolutely no damn buddy, marginalizes me ever. In Carey's attempt to explain his study's importance, it didn't stop others from just plain out ridiculing it. Reason.com commented that, quote, surely a satirist who set out to write a deliberate parody of left-wing papers using the jargon of the earnest social justice warrior could not have done a better job than a paper on just and equitable human-ice interactions. Even Gawker said the claim that more than $400,000 was spent on this study is misleading. Oh, Gawker's trying to defend it. How about that? They say it's misleading as the grant seems to have funded Carey's entire body of research on glaciers, which includes numerous other academic articles. So we spent $400,000 plus on a couple of articles. Folks, this is what Obama and his ilk have been doing with our taxpayer dollars. This is what they perverted the National Science Foundation into over the last 8 years. It's ridiculous. This is $412,000. This is a tiny, tiny drop in the bucket. I would love to see the total number of endowments the National Science Foundation doled out for 2016. As a matter of fact, I'm writing that down right now. That's something I'm going to start looking for, and I hope to bring you that number next week if I can get it. Just absolutely unbelievable. But you want to know what is believable? Here's what's believable. A federal judge in Texas on Saturday ordered a halt to another Obama administration effort to strengthen transgender rights. They already have rights. This time over health rules that social conservatives say could force doctors to violate their religious beliefs. The latest injunction by United States District Judge Reed O'Connor comes 4 months after he blocked a higher profile new set of transgender protections, a federal directive that required public schools to let transgender students use bathrooms consistent with their gender identity, a story we covered several months ago. Several of the Republican-controlled states that brought the lawsuit, including Texas, also sued over the health regulations that were finalized last May. Civil rights groups have hailed the new health rules as groundbreaking and anti-discrimination protections. The Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund said the new United States Health and Human Services regulations advised that certain forms of transgender discrimination by doctors, hospitals, and insurers violated the Affordable Care Act. But a coalition of religious medical organizations said the rules could force doctors to help with gender transition contrary to their religious beliefs or medical judgment. O'Connor agreed in his 46-page ruling, saying the rules place substantial pressure on plaintiffs to perform and cover transition and abortion procedures. The rules were set to take effect on Sunday. Plaintiffs will be forced to either violate their religious beliefs or maintain their current policies, which seem to be in direct conflict with the rule and risk the severe consequences of enforcement, O'Connor wrote. Transgender rights advocates have called that a far-fetched hypothetical, saying a person would not approach a doctor who lacked suitable experience and expertise. The Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund criticized the injunction as contrary to existing law and said it expects the ruling to be overturned on appeal. Nod, nod, wink, wink. Here comes that Supreme Court. Judge O'Connor's conclusion that transgender people and persons who have had abortions are somehow accepted from protection is deeply troubling. Legally specious and morally repugnant, said Ezra Young, the organization's director of Impact Litigation. Federal officials did not immediately react to the ruling, and adding to the uncertainty is a new administration under President-elect Trump. Many transgender people expect him to abandon or weaken the transgender protection efforts pursued by the Obama administration. Trump sent mixed signals about this approach to transgender rights during his campaign, at one point saying transgender celebrity Caitlyn Jenner could use whatever bathroom she preferred in one of his luxury buildings. Well, there you go, folks. In a nutshell, who the hell knows what the nut's going to do, right? Hey, look, it doesn't matter if you have a D after your name, or an R after your name, or an I after your name, or an L after your name in Washington, D.C. I don't care who you are, what party you're affiliated with. If you're screwing up, you're going to get called out right here. Folks, that's tonight's show. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Stay tuned for Jesse's POV, then Constitution and Culture, and then America Off the Rails. And make sure you come back next Wednesday night for another fun-filled hour with me, your friendly neighborhood grouch. Peace and God bless.
The American way.